On today's show, we'll have a full reaction following General Manager Steve Staios' press conference. The Senators fall to 8-9-1 on the season after a 5-2 loss against the Edmonton Oilers.
And we have a SensCentral Citizen. Today, it's Mathieu Larocque.
This is Brady Kachuk, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome. You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers bet $5, and if you win, you'll get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just head to FanDuel.com to get started. Today is Wednesday, November 20th, and Pilsy, how are you feeling? Not only after last night's loss, but after Steve Staios addressed the media.
Well, I'm still a little emotional after last night's loss. Got to flush a lot of that frustration out in the postcast. Go check it out if you haven't watched or listened already. But Ross, there's a reason he's called Steady Stevie Staios, and it's not just because it's great alliteration, the SSS, but he's a calming presence. He's a constant professional whenever he has to talk to the media, giving us enough that he's actually saying something, but not too much that anything can really get blown out of proportion, which is what we've come to expect from Steve Staios. And that was essentially what today's press conference was for me. Was there one thing that particularly stood out to you?
Well, he could have been a lawyer, that's for sure.
Big time, yeah.
But also, it's an internal thing. Like, they just need to be better. He's understanding that. I liked his one line. We think we've been playing better, but they keep score for a reason. They certainly do, and you are what your record says you are at the end of the day, and it's not good enough. He says not one guy needs to step up. They all need to look around the dressing room and be better, including Linus Ullmark. Steve Staios, big vote of confidence, and doesn't really have much option. He just gave him a 4-year extension. He says the long track record for Linus Ullmark, it gives him confidence that he's going to bounce back from this lull. Obviously, 5 goals last night, 5 goals against the Philadelphia Flyers in his previous start on Thursday. That on only 19 shots. But I think the message is something, and you look in the chat during that stream from the Senators, and the fan base is sick of words. And I know Staios has only been here a year and a month, but for everyone else, it's been 7+ years of misery, and they want success. They want it now. We want it now. And it's so frustrating how one thing leads to another with this team. And I'm glad Staios understands that as well. When they give up these 2 quick goals, when you're friggin' announcing your goal to tie a game in the arena and the other team scores right away. It just feels like whenever there's an opportunity to lose momentum for this Senators group, they find a way to do it. So I think that the internal aspect is correct. You're not going to be making an enormous trade mid-season, let alone before December. It's about looking all these guys in the eye across the room from you if you're in the locker room and saying, how can we be 5% better and get through the tough parts of the game? You're going to get scored on, but how can you stop the bleeding quickly is the real question that the Senators have failed to answer now for a number of years. They really need to figure it out because the clock is ticking, and even though they've been losing, it feels like everybody in the East is losing this year. You look at the out-of-town scoreboard, of course the Islanders get 1 point last night, but beyond that, like, it's far from over is what I'm trying to say here. And I know it feels like rock bottom again, but I agree with Steve in the case that they have over 50% of the expected goals, over 50% of the shot share. It's just moments within the game that lose momentum is killing this team.
Yeah, I think it's fair that there's no need to make a big panic move. I think they have the right group here. It's just about, and this is something he really focused in on, is each guy individually picking themselves up and elevating their game rather than casting blame or anything like that, because I think certain guys have been up, certain guys have been down, and we haven't been able to mesh those two together. Like Ullmark and Sanderson, those would be the top two guys I would look at and say, they're not playing up to the level that we expect them to be. And we know they can. He referenced Ullmark has been a consistent goalie his entire career. Sanderson, even though he's a young defenseman, he's been mostly consistent his entire short career already. And I think, Ross, you talk about looking at the standings and seeing how other teams are doing. And this is a half glass of water here. And you can decide whether it's half full or half empty, because the Ottawa Senators are only 2 points out of a wild card spot. Now you got the Penguins, Flyers, Bruins, and Islanders. You're going to have to pass to do that, but you're 2 points out. But the issue, Ross, is you're also 1 point away from being dead last in the conference, not just the division, in the conference. So it depends how Ottawa Senators fans want to look at that. Is that a good thing? You're right there. Or is it a bad thing? You're almost at rock bottom.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and that's why this is such a critical homestand, Billsy. Like we said, you got to win 3 out of 4. Well, guess what? You got to win 3 out of 3 now because you dropped the first one, and it's not going to get easier. And I know Vegas, second half back-to-back, they're in Toronto tonight. We'll briefly touch on that at the end of today's show, but also they've got their game tonight, just like the Oilers did on Monday in Montreal. They come to Ottawa, they're pissed off, and they do something about it. The Sens are pissed off, and they allow these momentum goals. And look, I say that Josh Norris cross-checking penalty is a penalty 10 times out of 10, but then I was reminded Connor McDavid scored a goal last year against Ottawa on the exact same play where he cross-checked Thomas Chabot out of the way and then went in and scored. So maybe it gets called 9.7 times out of 10, just not when old McJesus does it. Look, they lost last night's game to the best players in the world. McDavid, 2 goals and an assist. Draisaitl, a goal and 2 assists. You want to be better, and I think they did a good job of taking accountability for that after the game. Thomas Chabot called that the worst game of his season. I would agree. Now, what I don't like is Chabot and Travis Green saying they weren't ready to play. What's the excuse for that? They were off on Sunday, full day off. They were practicing on Monday. Travis Green says it wasn't a crisp practice, so they have an optional morning skate. Yeah. This is the type of little thing that can make a difference. And some people might say, hey, that's inconsequential. Well, when you're losing and the margins are so small, these little things could be the difference between winning and losing.
And Ross, unfortunately, it is the month of November, the scariest month for an Ottawa Senators fan. The Ottawa Senators are at a 3-4-1 record. 3-5-1 record.
Yeah.
5 games left. So if they run the table in November, the best they can have is an 8-5-1 record.
I'll take that.
I'll take that too, Ross, but we're talking about winning 5 straight games to achieve that.
My hot take was we need to be above 500 in November. So I'm not looking at 8-5-1. I'm looking math guy. Let's go 6-6-1.
Sure. Yep, I think that checks out.
No, I think I lost the game. 6-6-2.
Yeah, well, I mean, but Ross, then you escape November at a 500 record, and you're kind of in a similar spot where the Sens are right now, depending on how the rest of the Eastern Conference goes.
I'm telling you, you just have to get through to January 1st. After that long road trip, if you're within 3 or 4 points of a playoff spot, I'm still confident. Look at the end of season schedule. It is a grind right now. You got to keep your head above water, though. Left foot, left arm, right arm. You're just making it at least buoy to normalcy. I don't need you to jump out of the water 2 feet like you're a freak athlete. I just need you to keep your head above water for now. You cannot let these losing streaks drag on. And now that's winless in 3 for your Ottawa Senators. Tomorrow is an enormous game, and we'll have a full game day preview tomorrow on Locked On Senators. Pillsy, though, great citizen coming up.
Yep, our citizen is Mathieu Larocque, a Gatineau resident. So we get into the whole Ottawa-Gatineau community factor of the team, him talking about how he became a Sens fan and how he feels about this team today.
You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. You guys know that Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for your shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You guys heard me right. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. Best part is, you don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app, use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. Run your game. This episode is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You guys know FanDuel is the official online sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, and they're America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one easy place. So, when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL.
We now welcome on this week's SensCentral Citizen. We're heading across the bridge where we find Mathieu Larocque. Mathieu, welcome to Locked On Senators. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Doing great. Hey, after last night?
Well, it's great being with you guys. After last night,
There we go.
It's mixed feelings.
It's like a big group hug, little therapy here. We'll start with that. How were your expectations going in to the Edmonton game, and what are you feeling now 12 hours later?
So going into the Edmonton game, I knew like McDavid was going to be hungry, Draisaitl was going to be hungry, but I still expected the Sens, after being shut out against Carolina, which is a game I thought they'd lose. Let's be honest, Saturday night in Carolina, they've always had our number. So I'm like, hey, we'll rebound against Edmonton. They haven't been doing a great job this year. So I'm like, hey, if Timmy's on fire, if Ullmark can just put up a decent game, I'm like, we've got a shot. And then the first shot of the game happened. And I knew it was over. Like, not that I don't believe like this team can go out and score goals like they've been doing it, but it just showed me that it wasn't going to be a good night for Ullmark. And I can't blame it on everything, right? Weird rebounds, defensive breakdowns, but at the end of the day, some of those saves, you expect an $8 million goalie to be able to make a few of those. So, like, goalie friendly, I love Ullmark. I still believe it was the best choice. Bring him on. But I think it was Simmer on Twitter last night. He was saying it like, he's not showing confidence. There's something there. He's shaken, and it's showing in his game.
So I don't want to talk too much about last night's game because it hurts me. So give me a big picture of how you're feeling about this team now, because the fan base is scarred from hurting in November, year after year after year. I feel like half the fan base is like, it's time to panic. We got to blow it up. It's the same as every other year. We're going to be out of the race before Christmas, etc. And then the other half of the fan base is like, guys, we got to be patient. There's a lot of turnover, new coaches, new players, all these kinds of things. Where do you sit on that, Matt?
I was watching the postcast last night, and
Okay.
I fully agree with you, Pillizzi. Like, don't press the panic button. It's way too early. Like, this isn't the November we've seen. Like, the stats aren't pushing that way. Yes, like, the record ain't great, but we've got a good team. We've got 3 solid lines at least. We've got a great top 4 defenseman. Sanderson is just finding his footing. It happens, but he's like, there's a reason we signed him long-term. He is a great D. We've got good goaltending now. Even Forsberg is putting up better numbers, and he's looking better than he has last year after his surgery. Green is a great coach. Like, haven't seen him run like in the preseason at the Slush Puppy Center, seeing how he runs practice, how he talks to his players, the discipline. Like, we have a great coaching core, whether like it's Alfie on there, but everybody seems to have their lane. The head coach is taking care of the big vision, and then you've got all your expert. Like, I believe in this team. I think it's just a hump. And I think it's a little bit that confidence, right? We talk about Ullmark's confidence, but I think it's this team, just the demons from the last 2 seasons and 3 seasons in November. And they had a very hard beginning of the season, right? You're you start the season off with all your final Stanley Cup winners, your hard teams, a lot of divisional play. So it gets to you. But I think like we'll look in about when we hit the 25, 30 games mark of the season, I think we'll see like this team is still contending, and maybe a godsend this year. Like, that shows it's different. Nobody in the Atlantic is like making any waves. Like, we still got a decent shot in there. We're not far removed from a wild card spot. Like, there's no panic here. It's a hard season. Like, we can talk about Ullmark's number, but no goalie is putting out good numbers this year. Like, nobody's doing a 940.
Yeah, it's crazy. The league average goaltending is like 898 right now this year. It's the first time it's been under 900 in quite some time. But I want to get more into that a little bit later. We want to get to know you, Mathieu, and how you became an Ottawa Senators fan. I see you got the shirt, the hat, the background. You feel like you're locked in.
I feel like I'm just like an NFL rookie on the first day. He's got all the gear, and it's all matching. I was looking myself in the camera, and I felt like, am I Travis Kelce? I feel like it's giving off like a Chiefs vibe.
Hey, Chiefs, I'd trade our record for theirs any day of the week.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. But yeah, I was a long-term hockey fan. Like, as a kid, watched the Habs growing up. You know, I'm a little older than you guys. You know, I'm late 30s, so the Sens didn't exist. So I remember watching with my dad the Habs Cup run in '93. And it was great. Like, I remember the feeling. Like, I was old enough. I was 6 years old. So you can still feel the excitement. And it was great. And Patrick Roy, like, I think maybe that's why I became like such in love with goalies. It's the era of Patrick Roy, Marty Brodeur. Like, it was a great time. And, you know, once we got a little later in the 90s, I grew up, maybe didn't follow hockey as much. And then as I got in high school, my best buddy was an avid Sens fan. Like, he was telling me about last night's game and Alfie and Radek Bonk. And then he's like, Damian Rose, Ron Tugnut. I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. So started following the games and got into like the Leafs and Sens rivalry. That was just epic. Darcy Tucker, Ty Domi. God, I hated Pat Quinn. Anytime he chewed that gum on the bench, I just wanted to knock it out of his mouth. And, you know, I got the Curtis Joseph, then Ed Belfour over, and it was just great. Like, as a fan, it was a great era because the Sens were great. 03, the President's Trophy. So you're just getting into it. And those were the golden years. And I remember, like, the first game I went was, 2003. And we went there. It was against Dallas. Ron Tugnut wasn't there. It was a 3-2 OT win. And we were like, I think mid 300 level, but man, it was just the best feeling ever. Got hooked on there. And then as soon as you're happy and I got into college, I'm like, yes, these are going to be great years. I'm going to see hockey. The lockout happens. No hockey for a full season. So you're like trying to get your fix everywhere you're following, you're looking for updates. I think I actually did a presentation in college. I don't know what the class was, but I talked about the lockout and what the reasons behind that. Was just trying to get my fix. And then everybody knew Crosby was coming, but Ovechkin was right there. And you're like, hey, maybe Ottawa has a chance of getting Crosby, because that year they did a draw to figure out who gets number one. And the draw was like the draft was happening in Ottawa at the Westin. So you're like, hey, maybe we're getting Crosby. We didn't.
We got Brian Lee.
Yes. Don't talk about Brian Lee, Ross. Like, That
was
was
it
like,
two picks before Kopitar as well?
Yeah.
Heck
Like,
yeah.
the guy was like, what, 180 pounds, 5'10"? Like, that guy was never going to be a defenseman.
Drafted out
know.
of high school too.
Yeah.
Crazy.
You didn't see
He-
that back then at all. Like, yeah, out of Minnesota high school, we're taking Brian Lee. All right, let's go.
It was a dark draft, but hockey was back. It was a great summer. They signed Hasek. So, Ottawa's beast from the playoffs from years back against Buffalo was now on our side.
Yep.
We needed that number one goalie. Like, I used to be a Lalime fan. Like, I actually have in my yearbook a quote from somebody who wrote me. He's like, hey, keep on making saves in life like Patrick Lalime. That has not aged well, let me tell you.
Oh man, yeah, that's a great time to jump on the Sens bandwagon. I got a little trivia for you. You're right, it was a 3-2 overtime win over Dallas. Do you remember who scored the overtime winner of the first game you ever went to?
Oh God, I'm trying to think.
What year is this?
2003.
Okay.
He had 3 points on the night. Capped it off with his first goal.
Was it Fisher?
No, he assisted on it though. Very close.
Oh.
Magnus Arvidsson.
Nice.
Goal.
Number 20.
Yep, exactly. The machine, if you will. But I mean, that era, it's so easy to fall in love with a team that wins. I'm still telling people, Mathieu, that the worst thing that ever happened in my childhood was having the Sens make the playoffs every year from when I was 6 years old until I was 16 years old. And it just felt like every year you knew that when you started the season, you had a chance to win the Stanley Cup. Which team, was it 2003, 2006, 2007, did you think had the best chance to win the Cup?
Or what about 2017?
Sure.
Oh, I'll get back to 2017 because I have the most heartbreaking anecdote on that.
Oh,
But
God.
like, as much as I like the 2007 run, like, it was great and I loved it, and the whole city got into vibe. They had Belly doing this song with Hot 89.9, Go Sens Go.
Sens go.
Go.
Oh, yeah. And I had that on MP3. It was playing in the car. Like, I loved it. I still think, though, that 05-06 team had it all. Like, I went to 40 of the 41 home games that year. I got into the playoff. I was like full mood. I had gears. I had cups. I had patches for a jersey. Like, I was sure that this was the year, even after we learned what an adductor muscle was. I still don't really know, but we know
Yes.
as fans, like, that broke my heart. I'm like, okay, let's get this Ray Emery kid. And I'm like, okay, he's giving us a chance. We start out 4-1 against Tampa Bay, the first series. I'm like, okay, we've got the team. We've got Danny Heatley. We're still like firing all cylinders. And then the Sabres.
They dominated that series against Tampa. Like, it wasn't even close.
No, like, it wasn't Tampa Bay from today. Well, not from today, but from like 5 years ago. It was.
But I mean, they had won the Cup in the last season because there's a lockout in between. But like, they were the reigning Cup champs.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I was cheering for Calgary that year with Mika Kiprasov.
Yeah, a lot of people say they actually won.
That was a heartbreaker. That what was his name? I'm like Craig Conroy, but it's not Conroy. It's
Martin Jelena had the shot.
That I still say that was a goal.
Yeah, it was.
It's more than that Nordique goal that they say they had. That wasn't in. Alain Cote's goal wasn't in. But no, it was.
You're saying then they got to Buffalo. I mean, that game 1 of the series, remember, it was like 7-6. It was almost like Jets Avalanche this past year, where the first game, it was just goaltending optional.
Yeah, and I was there. I was there for that game, and heartbroken. Like, I'm like, oh, this is not going the way I think it's going to go. And lose it 4-1. Remember that last game as well. Alfie got outplayed. They scored the goal. But we got that sweet revenge. Alfie ran the same play the next year to get us to the final, and that was sweet. Like, but I think like 05-06, they had put all the pieces and they were going for it. And I still stand by, if Hasek hadn't gone injured, that was our year.
And how cool would it have been too, because it would have been a revenge series against Buffalo, against a team he won the Vezinas with, and almost won a Stanley Cup as well. Like,
Yeah, I think 06 is probably my call too, but like 2003, they were elite as well. Like game 7, 2 minutes left, tie game
Jeff
against
Friesen.
the Devils, and the Devils like dominated the Stanley Cup final. If it weren't for Jean-Sébastien Giguère, that's a sweep in the finals. So it's frustrating, I think, too, where you see 03 and 07 and 2017, where it's like, if you had just gotten that one step further, I think they were beating Nashville in 2017.
Yeah, that's why 2017 is always my answer, because it's who would have your opponent been in the finals? Because like 07, no one was beating that Ducks team. No one.
No.
Like you didn't have a chance. We're going to get right back to our SensCentral Citizen, but first, a word from our friends over at Game Time. You guys know that Game Time is the official online ticketing app of the Locked On Podcast Network, and Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Check out the all-in pricing. Make sure you turn on the all-in pricing feature so that you know your price up front. No surprise fees at checkout. Get panoramic views from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends over at the GLEBE Central Pub. You guys know the GLEBE Central Pub is the official pub of the Locked On Senators podcast. We got our jersey hung up in the bar. That's how much we love the GLEBE Central Pub. And we love it because they got great food, great drinks, and of course, there's great people there. The GLEBE Central Pub loves Ottawa Senators fans so much that they're doing whatever they can to get Sens fans to games with the GLEBE Central Pub bus shuttle. You guys know that the shuttle is an awesome time. The vibes are always great. Go to the GLEBE Central Pub website to see all the shuttle dates. Sue, the bus driver, will take you from the GLEBE Central Pub to the CTC. Enjoy the game. Don't worry about parking or driving home or anything like that, because the bus will be there in the parking lot waiting for you. Hop back on the bus and keep the good vibes going at the GLEBE Central Pub. You guys know the GLEBE Central Pub is our pub at 779 Bank Street. Check out their website to see all the shuttle dates. It's the GCP, where the vibes are free. And now, back to our SensCentral Citizen, Mathieu. Yeah, so I hate to bring us back to this, but you did say you had a heartbreaking story about 2017. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So 2017, it's a year where nobody expects the Sens to really get that far, but the pesky Sens are there and they're just like rolling in, and every like game they play, I'm like, oh, and then they get to this Eastern final against Pittsburgh. And I'm like, okay, I'm like, we could do this, but I'm not seeing all of the games, because that's exactly when we decided a year prior that we're going to Disney World with our 4-year-old. So I'm at Disney, so I'm keeping track, right? Looking what the scores are, and then they've got that game 7. Well, you know what? Game 7 is on our last night there. So we've got an early flight the next morning. I'm in my hotel room, sitting in the dark, volume down on the TV, maybe like 2, so wake nobody up, because my wife's like, don't wake me up.
Yeah.
And I'm watching and I'm like, okay, that's it. Like, we're doing this. We're going against Nashville. Like, to me, this is the perfect story. You bookend a great trip. You're getting home and it's the Stanley Cup final once again. I'm like, 10 years after the last final, we're going back. And then they lose. And then I have to go to bed with a bag of emotion. And there's no podcast. There's no ventcast. There's nobody I can rely to go through these emotions with and talk it through. I've got my wife that's snoring beside me, the 4-year-old that's deep asleep. I just have to like put the cover over my head and just
you and Mickey Mouse talking about how bad that went.
And Mickey's like, "Hey, folks, don't worry."
That was a good impression. Yeah, geez, that was a tough night for Ross and I as well. A tough night for all Sens fans. I wanna get into, though. Let's move on from sad nostalgia. You're in Gatineau. What does it mean to you being a Sens fan in Gatineau and having Andlauer and the whole Sens franchise organization really making a point to mention this is about the Ottawa Gatineau community? Like, they're really hammering that home. How does that make you feel as a Gatineau resident?
It's great. Like, I feel for like, and I get it's the Ottawa Senators. Like, they've been in Canada for like forever, for the last 30 years. So I get it. But to feel acknowledged by the organization, by management, by the sales team, like having Sylvain Saint-Laurent join that team shows the commitment to talk to fans, like not only francophones, but francophones across the river. And it makes a big difference because I've been cheering him on for like the last 25 years. It's important to me. I'll follow the team. I did the drive to Canada, but like, I don't like it. Folks in New Orleans don't like it either. Like, it's not fun for anybody. Great rink. Like, I've got nothing to say. Like, it's still a great building minus hot water. So, but it feels so good to have Andlauer go out there and talking French and talking to reporters in French and showing his commitment. And when he talks about Le Breton, he talks about the proximity of just being across the bridge and being downtown. So, and the biggest commitment I think he's shown to the city is having a fan event at the Slush Puppy Center a week prior to the official fan fest at the Canadian Tire Center. I was going to call it the Scotiabank place. Like,
Palladium.
Yeah, God. But like, it was great. They showed up and they had the best event. Like, I wasn't like, my son wanted to go and I'm like, I'm bringing you along. I'm like, maybe we'll get a few autographs. Because the year before we went to the fan fest and you had to stand in line, get bracelets ahead of time. And they're like, you'll go in this lineup. You don't know who you're going to get. You're going to have two players. And we did. And we got Brandstrom. So that worked out well. We've got his little player card with his signature on it. But I was happy. My kid didn't care. I had Chris Neil. Hey, I got a selfie with Chris Neil. He signed the jersey. I was happy. I'm like,
did he punch you in the face?
Not even. He didn't want to. He's like, he didn't want to get blood on his shirt. Like, so,
I feel like that'd be a badge of honor. It's like, hey, Chris, nice to meet you. Can you punch me in the face?
Exactly. Punch me like I'm Darcy Tucker.
Yeah.
But no, it like this year we like, hey, we'll show up early. They're doing a red carpet. I'm like, maybe we'll get lucky. And we got there, got a spot like at the beginning of the red carpet, and we waited. And they paraded almost all the players from the lineup. Luckily, like somebody had a great idea of putting like a little number with a sticker on their clothing or their hat, because you get a lot of rookies there. Like, I'm used to seeing him with a jersey on. Some faces are recognizable. Like, you know, when Timmy comes, you know, when Shabbat or Kachuk, but like, you don't know, like McEwen, I could confuse him with like, he's got the generic face. So like looking at numbers, I'm looking at my kid, you know, we don't want him. I'm like, oh yeah, you got Yak here. We're getting Yak. And I got Yak signature. I'm like, that's like going to have value later on. But, and all the players came. I wanted Ullmark. Like, I was happy, but he didn't go down to red carpet, but got some great players, and they were so friendly. Like, they took the time. Like, the organization was patient. They waited to get all the players, even if it was delaying the schedule. They were there, friendly. They took their time. Like, Kachuk signed, I think, must have signed like 200, 300 jerseys and hats. Giroux was fun. You know, I tried with him. I watched him play when he was in the queue, like at Olympiques. I had season tickets back then.
Doesn't he have his jersey in the rafters in that building?
He does, which is quite funny, right? Your jersey's there, but you're still playing on the ice. But to me, he's top four. Like, I got the Kachuk jersey this summer, like the last one before they pulled the Fanatics one. It's still a good Adidas one, but I'm like, it's a Brady jersey. I'm like, Brady's the only one who gets to sign in the 7.
Yep.
And up front, I'm like, who do I put there? So I got Timmy, I got Batterson, and Giroux. Those were the only players that were allowed to sign in the in the crest. Like, not putting any like non-franchise players on there. And
I like that. Now, Mathieu, when you're going around Gatineau, have you noticed maybe a little bit of a shift? I know it's still early in the Andlauer regime, but I know it is Habs country right when you cross the bridge. Have you noticed maybe a few more Sens fans over the course of the last year or so? Maybe merch when you're out at the grocery store or whatnot?
I've noticed a bit more merch. Like if you go to like large box stores, whether it's a Walmart or Canadian Tire, like it's not just Habs gear. There's also room for Sens gear. Same thing for like Sport Expert. Like you're seeing a little more of them integrating the market. Costco as well. They used to like basically if you were in Ottawa, you'd get the Ottawa gear at the Costco. Gatineau, you'd get the Montreal gear. Toronto, you'd get the Toronto gear. So it's a little better, but they're still like miles to go, but you don't blame it, right? It's a hard market, like the Habs fan, but fans of other teams. Like I growing up, like I had a buddy who's a Devils fan, a lot of Habs fan, and I think we were saying it on a postcast last night. Like, why are all those Edmonton jerseys?
Yeah,
who are they?
Crazy.
Hey, it's
Right.
better than the Seattle jerseys we saw a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, but there was only a handful of those. Like the Oilers took over the CTC last night.
Think about it. It's like I live in Winnipeg now, and everybody's a fan of another team because when they grew up, the Jets weren't here. So it's like the Oilers in the 80s were the team.
Yeah.
Right?
And they get
So
McDavid.
when you have McDavid, when you have a superstar like that, a generational talent, you're going to get those casual fans who love to see the best at what they do. It's like my buddy Wes, who every year in Chell, he only plays as the team that won the cup the last year.
Smart.
Those people.
Oh yeah, no, but I get it, right? It's like Edmonton's a good team. They've got McDavid, they got franchise player. So hey, I cheered for Edmonton when they did their cup run last year, and also when they lost against Carolina, which is why I probably hate Rod Brandamore so much.
Oh, I love that. Mathieu, final question for me. This has been great conversation. Which player on this roster so far this season are you most impressed with, and who would you like to see more from?
Okay. So for the most, I think it's Tim Stützle. Like he's been incredible. And don't get me wrong, the raw talent has always been there, but we've seen him play under DJ. We saw he wasn't soft. He was injured last year, and he came in training camp, and I don't know if it's the tainted visor. I don't know what exactly, but he's like all of a sudden he's a sniper. He's making the plays. He's dangling around everybody. He's the fastest skater on the ice. Like, and his 200-foot game, like I call that the Travis Green effect, where he's actually going back to back check. He's the first one on the puck, even if you got Shabbat and Jensen on there. He's checking people into the board. Like he's basically what I thought of Tkachuk last year as a player. He's well-rounded and he's making the team look good. Flip side, this year, like in particular, like I could go on our deep core and trail mix Hamannik and talk about how bad he is, but Travis Green likes him. And like I said on Twitter, maybe the view from the bench is just different than what we see when we watch it live or on TV. But I think the one who's disappointed me more outside of Ullmark is Brady. Not that I don't like Brady's play. Like some people are calling his leadership in question. I don't. Like I feel he's got the leadership quality, but something's off on his game. Might be the new daddy effect. Maybe he's tired, but like I feel like he's not finishing his checks. He doesn't back check as much. He's making the like offensive errors, drop passes that are not connecting.
Last night he went offside about 5 times.
Exactly. Maybe he wants it too much. Maybe he's feeling the pressure as the captain, but he's not. Like take Brady from last year, Timmy from this year, and get them each on their line. And I think like they're the pizza line of this era.
So follow-up question to that, Mathieu. How would you organize the top 6? Would you have Timmy with Brady, or would you put them each on their own lines like Travis Green has done recently?
I like him on each of their line. I feel like you need to spread the wealth of like scoring ability, but also I don't think they combine well when you look at their style. Brady's a guy who gets in front of the net and he's looking for that tip in, but big body like him and the play Timmy plays, more chances that he actually stops Timmy's shots. So I think it's good to spread him there. And so far from what we've seen, I think it's a winning combination. And we're lacking maybe like a good other right winger that we could put there. Not that I have anything, but like Ridley Gregg shouldn't be on the second line.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. You see where he was starting the year as the fourth line center, and people are like, oh, is he too low in the lineup? And then all of a sudden he's top line at wing. I think that it's time to put the Sens lines in a blender, and we're going to see it practice. We're recording just before. We'll hit that in the first segment, so you already know right now if Travis Green has changed the lineup. But I think it's time to put a little shock through the boys, because look, you saw Edmonton rattled last night the way they played the last two games, specifically against Montreal. You would have thought the Sens would have come out with that same need and energy after getting shut out in Carolina on Saturday. So now there's really nothing to fall back on. This game against Vegas tomorrow is going to be huge. Second game of a 4-game homestand. Mathieu, when's the next time you're heading to the CTC?
I don't have plans yet, but they just dropped a nice Black Friday deal just before we got on here. Buy one, get one. So it smells like a Christmas present from me to me, and I'll bring my son. Like, he's a huge Sens fan, so he'll be happy. But so definitely going back. We went to the home opener. Well, he didn't go. Like, he cried maybe, but I went with a buddy, and it was great. Like, if we can get back to that shape, like, I'll be buying more tickets and I'll be there. And I told my wife already, they make the playoffs, I'm there, like, getting that pre-sale code and first one in line to get tickets. Like, game one at home against whomever, I'm there, face paint red, ready to go.
Well, we will see you there, Mathieu. Everyone can follow Mathieu on Twitter as well. Larocque87. Mathieu, really appreciate you taking the time. It's been great getting to hear your story and some great takes on the Ottawa Senators. Thank you for doing this, and we'll chat down the road.
Thanks for having me, boys. It's great. And if you haven't done so, look at Laleem's Marsh and get that link for Movember.
All right, Pillsy. Stick taps to Mathieu for joining us. Really fun conversation with him. My final thoughts. Did you see what Ilya Samsonov said today in Toronto?
Well, I'm pretty sure they asked him, like, hey, are you excited to start up against your old team? And he kind of brushed it off like, my old team, I don't care about the revenge game. I got a different narrative in mind. You want to clue the people in on what that is, Ross?
Yeah, so you can head to our Twitter at SensCentral. I'm not going to say word for word what the quote is, because this potty mouth, Ilya Samsonov, had a little something to say. Now, this goes back when Linus Ullmark was playing for the Bruins. He said he was surprised that the Leafs kept Samsonov in net. He thought that they would have had a better chance to beat his Bruins if Joseph Woll was in net. Hey, guess what? I agree with Linus. I think Samsonov is a worse goalie than Joseph Woll. Anyways, I guess Samsonov caught wind of that, didn't like it, and this past summer when the NHL Network did their top 10 goalies, they had Linus Ullmark at number 10, and he specifically commented on that Instagram post with November 21st. So I don't know if he wants to have a goalie fight or if he just wants to prove he's the better goalie, but he brought it up again saying, no. I'm playing tomorrow against my guy, Ullmark.
And the funny thing is, Ross, and we talked about this, he must have known that that was not the first meeting between Vegas and Ottawa. Like, he wanted November 21st in Ottawa up against the Senators. He didn't just want to play up against the Senators, because he didn't reference doing it at home in Vegas. This is the game he wanted, and it makes me a little nervous, Ross, because I'm sure he's got the boys putting some money up on the board here. And you said you're going to hammer the Ottawa Senators money line at FanDuel. Go check out FanDuel for the odds. Yeah. How do you feel now you know that there's this rivalry goaltender narrative in? Does that increase your need to bet it, or does that make you want to hold off a little?
No, it makes me feel great. The only way I'm not making this bet is if Vegas is shut out tonight.
That's the only way.
The only way. Otherwise, we're going max bet, Ottawa Senators money line tomorrow at home. They better come out with the enthusiasm, confidence, competitiveness. I want to see Perron, Cousins, Amadio actually do something physically within the game. I know Amadio had that one rush at the post. It was a nice rush in the second period last night. But I just think that they need to be more physical top to bottom. And they need the power play to get going here. No shots on goal on 2 power plays last night. And I hope the Sens players know about this little rivalry here. I'm sure some of them do. let's get a big dub against Vegas. Game day preview tomorrow. Pillsy, any final thoughts from you?
Nope, that basically sums it up.
You're going to shut your...
Yeah, essentially. But Ullmark's got to start then, because like if Samsonov starts and Ullmark doesn't, it kind of deflates that whole thing.
Ullmark's got to start the rest of this homestand. Give him the keys. You ride or die with your number one goalie, and this is his opportunity to get into a rhythm.
Well, and Steve Staios, he maintained they have full confidence in Ullmark. They think he's going to figure his game out. So the only way you can figure your game out is by getting in there and doing it. So I'm with you. I want to see as much Linus Ullmark on this homestead as possible.
All right. CarCast for me got called in for a little family thing. All good on my end. Thank you to Pillsy for being flexible. Thank you to everyone who watches, listens, engages with the show. The comments in the postcast, so passionate. That's what I love about this fan base. So keep it up. We'll be back tomorrow. Game day preview for Brandon Piller. I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.